Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Get ready for truth bombs, belly laughs, and the kind of accent that turns car into a two-syllable adventure. Here's your host, Shaun.
Forgot to make an adjustment. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Edge of Liberty right here on the SHR Media Network. Sorry, I had that muted for a reason. And yeah, you know, you got to unmute it. Normally I use my little floor button for my temporary mute, but I did that one because I was doing some other things. It's a long story. I just suck at this sometimes. Got a lot to talk about this evening. Of course, we're going to talk about the off-year 2025 election and why everyone's making a big deal. Much ado about nothing, if you will. But we'll go through. We'll talk about what happened. We'll talk about, does it have any impact or anything that stuck out, anything was shocking. We'll get to that. Of course, I'm going to update about the tragedy in Louisville with the UPS MD-11F that crashed, and then talk about the man that nobody's talking about because it's kind of funny to me. But let's get into the elections. Here's the first thing. I'm going to start in New York City. I'm going to do New York City first. We'll cover all the other stuff too. But New York City, clearly, I think, being the biggest shock to people, the fact that you elect an Islamo-communist in the city where 9/11 transpired, I think is shocking a lot of people, and I certainly understand that. I did say hi to everyone in chat the first time, but I'll say it again. Phantom, who was first by about 15 minutes. Thank you, Phantom. Mike Pasqua's in the chat. Mission Ready Men is, of course, Big E is in the chat. He goes tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Pacific, noon on the East Coast on the SHR Media Network. We, a little side note, did a little run last night to test out our election coverage on the SHR Media website. If you have a chance, check it out. We thought we did pretty well. Would love to get any feedback. Bottom of the page, you can leave comments, design feedback, anything like that. Just go ahead and throw it in. So it wasn't even close with New York City. Everyone wants to blame Curtis Sliwa. If you go to my article on SHR Media, I broke down why Curtis Sliwa, it didn't necessarily matter. What mattered is everybody stayed home. And people who did show up, a majority of them under 30, voted for Mandami by 78%. The majority of the election were people under 30. And 78% voted for Mamdani. Cuomo got 17%, Sliwa got 4%, and that's according to a CBS poll. You have to understand, first of all, outside of New York City, it was a pretty tepid overall election. Virginia, yes, because of who was being replaced everything that went on with Jay Jones. New Jersey was kind of on the spotlight. We covered it certainly, but a lot of that was just because it was actually supposed to be close, and it was. I mean, it was close. I honestly thought it would be, as the night rolled on. But you have to understand something. And I'm going to pull up my little graph here that I did in shrmedia.com. You have to see how minimal the numbers were, because, Democrats are out there today talking about how this is like a sign of things to come. And even some conservatives fed into it a little bit too, about how we're stagnant, yada, yada, yada. Mondami, he can't run for president. He's not legally, he wasn't born here. He was born Uganda. So he cannot legally become president. New York City has 5.1 million registered voters. Of that, 2,049,000 voted. Think about what a small number that is. It's right around 40%. And then, like I said, you throw that youth vote in there. Mondami, look, we lost a large portion of the young generation to the siren call of communism because of academia and social media. Plain and simple. 32, 33 down to 20. Half that population, a lot of them, as I like to call them, awfuls, angry white female liberals, have bought into the siren call of socialism and communism. Well, Shaun, how do you know that Mondami's a socialist? Well, it's funny you should bring that up, because I didn't just inference this. It's not something that it's because I don't like him, so I'm going to call him a socialist. No, Mondami himself called himself a socialist.
Socialism. Terrifying word. A lot of people are afraid of the word socialism.
And
a lot of people have misconceptions about what it means. I'm a democratic socialist, and what socialism means to me is
I've said this a few times, and I'll say this again. When they say democratic socialism, they're throwing the word in democratic because they align themselves with the left, and they are part of the overall Democratic Party. But democratic socialism is not a real thing. It's almost like assault weapons, right? When they brought up that term, it's a made-up term. It's not a real term. It's a made-up term. Assault weapons and assault rifles, they made up to make them scary. Democratic socialism, they made up to make it sound lovely. But it's not. It's the one and the same. It's the same thing. And how do you know that? Look at how they're trying to gussy it up with this shot in this video right here. That's going to be a rose to tell you just how lovely socialism is.
Commitment to dignity.
Commitment to dignity.
A state that provides whatever is necessary for its people to live a dignified life.
Now, I know all my listeners, I know you guys know how horrible socialism is. I'm going to say this for the soundbite. Socialism does not provide everybody what they need to survive. They provide nothing except for what they think you need, whether you survive on that or not. And then the elite in socialism lives like kings. So just remember that. You get nothing. Remember when they were throwing around the word equity years ago with Kamala, and they were trying that big push for equity-based? It led to DEI, yada, yada, yada. That's socialism, by the way. That equity thing. Everybody starts evenly. Well, no, you don't. Because if you're born into the rich family and socialism, guess what? You're not starting as the same as the poor family in socialism. And as Big Earl just pointed out in the chat room, at the end of the day, it's communism, because communism is essentially just a party within socialism. It's just the party that swells when they have to use more force to keep people in line, because what the people are quote unquote getting to have their dignity is not enough. And they know that the violence will eventually come if they do not put the boot to your neck early, both metaphorically and really. So it is all one and the same. When they say socialism, again, a pretty way of saying communist. But let a young Mondami continue.
So the typical big three that we talk about are housing, healthcare, education. But frankly, if you look around in the moment of this pandemic,
Housing, healthcare, and education. Let's start with healthcare. We've seen iterations of healthcare all over the world that's socialized, and it's fucking garbage. Outside of the people who are in charge of it, everybody else tells you it's garbage, other than some social media influencers who are trying to just hold on to the socialist dream. Just go look at the stats. The stats tell you how horrible it is. Housing. This is going to happen under one of two ways. Either they're going to turn everything into public housing, which, except for the really nice houses, I'm talking everything will be the ghetto, because that's what socialism creates, because eventually you run out of other people's money. That's the problem with socialism, as the famous quote goes. And that's very true, as we just saw most recently in Venezuela. And education, like in North Korea and China, where it's all about the party first. The party is the education base. It's not how intelligent the youth are. And we've seen this in cities like Portland, or in states like Oregon and other places where everybody's passing. Baltimore's another huge one. There was the big report out of Baltimore last year with 25% of the people who graduated Baltimore schools could read. Not read on a college level, could read. That's what you get with socialized education. Public education sucks it as it is, and it's not even a socialized public education yet. Department of Education made it close. But, I mean, do you remember the fight over Common Core? That came from the Department of Public Education. We saw how horrible Common Core is and continues to be in some places. The DEI policies, like I was talking about in Portland, Oregon, where kids of color, it didn't matter. It did not matter whether or not they were competent in any of their disciplines in school. They were passed. They were graduated and sent off into the real world. And now, as a result, universities have to dumb down their requirements in order to get these kids to come in, because universities are not going to turn away money. So they're dumbing down the requirements. It is literally idiocracy happening before your eyes. Rondo, it's got what plants crave.
We see how many more things are necessary to live with a dignified life. We need our internet because we have all of our kids staying.
You don't need internet. I look, internet's nice. Internet's fun. Internet helps a lot. Yes, computers are a part of these children's lives, and they will be for a long time. I understand all of that. The idea that anybody needs government-paid internet, just like government-paid Obama phones, is beyond me. First and foremost, you may not know this. The big argument with Obama phones, it was, well, what if they need an emergency? If you have any phone that will power on and has the ability to transmit, which does not require a service, you can call 911 for. The GPS will track it, the phone number will come up, and the police will come. That's any phone, whether it has service or not. It will still dial 911. So instead of handing out, like, I don't know, little 911 boxes where you press the button if you need 911 and they come, you're going to hand out smartphones or provide internet to everybody. They do that at the public libraries. They do that at school. They do that in a lot of places. We don't need to be Wi-Fiing entire neighborhoods, because this is bread and circus, folks. This is to keep you occupied, so it takes you longer to realize how shitty things are going to be.
At home doing remote learning, and if you don't have internet, you can't be taught, you can't learn. Whether it's childcare, whether it's public transportation, whether it's our utilities, whether it's our housing.
Long and short is everything's going to be free all the fucking time. That's what he's getting to. We're going to make it all free. We're going to make it all free. As a matter of fact, he said that on the campaign, how everything was going to be free and how everything was going to be get away. So public transportation, he's going to dumb down the police department. By the way, the fire commissioner for the NYFD, or FDNY, I should say, who is a Jewish man, resigned today because of Mandami's A, criticism of Israel, and B, an ability to at least condemn Hamas for October 7th and other anti-Israeli beliefs and sentiments and some friends. And Mandami last night was so glad and thankful for the people of New York City, the actual residents of New York City, the people who've been there for years that elected him. He didn't mention them once in his acceptance speech.
Thank you to those so often forgotten by the politics of our city who made this movement their own. I speak of Yemeni bodega owners and Mexican abuelas, Senegalese taxi drivers and Uzbek nurses, Trinidadian line cooks and Ethiopian aunties. Yes, aunties.
And never once mentioned America and New York at that point. He's thanking all of these other people. He's thanking all of these people and identifying where they were once from that supported him. As somebody once said, when you import the third world, you get the third world. However, he didn't just stop there. He didn't quote any of our founders. No, he quoted...
When an age ends and when the soul of a nation longs to...
By the name of Jaro Ahal. I actually practiced that name too, and I still screwed it up. Last name Nehru. He's a Marxist. He's actually the founding father of socialism. And this part of his speech right here is essentially a direct quote from the founding father of socialism in India.
Standing before you, I think of the words of Jawaharlal Nehru. A moment comes but rarely in history when we step out from the old to the new, when an age ends and when the soul of a nation long suppressed finds utterance. Tonight we have stepped out from the old into the new.
Isn't that just amazing? Of all the people he could have quoted, look, you got to remember, and I know, again, my listeners know this. When he was running, he wasn't showing you who he really was, right? He's not telling you how he really believes. He showed enough of it. He showed enough of it for you to realize that, like, hey, this guy's a socialist and fucking New York's about to goddamn elect him. Yep, that's where we are. He also released a video today, and I don't have it because I'm not going to make you sit here and watch him all night, because you're going to see him for the next however many years until there's a recall, because there will be a recall, because I'm predicting that New York City is going to go to absolute shit. You think it's bad now, it's only going to get worse. But he released a video today talking about all the things he's doing to get ready to on his transition team and blah, 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 and then asked you to send money, or asked New York City residents to send money at the end. Not even a full 24 hours later, and he's asking for money. And make no mistake, he's eventually going to run for governor in New York, or he's going to run for a House of Representative seats. He is going to be just as bad as the Squad, if not worse. He is foreign-born Bernie. If Bernie had sex with AOC and what's her face there, Ilhan Omar, and produced some sort of weird baby, you get Zoran Mandami, and that's clearly it. So I'm not going to beat the dead horse. Horrible decision by New York, but they're going to fucking live with it. They're going to live with it. They didn't show up to vote. It's not Curtis Sliwa's fault. It's not even Cuomo's fault. It's New York City's voters' fault. You didn't show up. You didn't make this guy go away. The guy's never had a real job to speak of. The guy's never had any real experience to speak of. And you elected him. Good luck with that. Let me know how it turns out. Actually, I'll know because it's going to be on the news. So go down to Virginia. Virginia was another weird election. Again, nobody showed up. In Virginia, less than 54%, 6.3 million registered voters, 3.4 million voters showed up. Half as much, and they weren't obviously all conservatives. You got the Arlington area. I was wrong when I said that I thought the shutdown would benefit conservatives. It didn't. But Virginia, I mean, just to show you where Democratic Virginia voters are, they voted in Jay Jones for Attorney General, the guy who fantasizes about killing kids. Abigail Spanberger, she's out of her mind, was absolutely, had so many racial epitaphs and depictions against Winsome Sears. Democrats are okay with that racism. Racism is okay with Democrats as long as it comes from their side. They just make an excuse for it. Mike Pasqua said, I was waiting for the Soviet national anthem last night, as was I, if I'm being entirely honest, Mike. I was as well. Phantom, talking about the weird little three-way I mentioned earlier, did not need that image in your head. I apologize. Nobody needs that in their head. But that race was close too. If you go to both of those races were actually really close. Virginia, both the Virginia governor and AG were both really close. As a matter of fact, I'll even show you how close, just because, I have to. If you scroll down to, this is on SHR Media, it was 57-42 when it all shook out. But the reality of the situation is, it was probably a lot. You had the greater DC area show up, and that's where the number difference is. Again, 6-point change with the Jay Jones, Mayaris race. It's just mind-boggling to me what people on the left, and when I tell you they're unreasonable, when I tell you that they're monstrous, when I tell you that the left is they're no longer, and I know we've said this for a long time now, but they're no longer the party of love and caring and understanding. And they've done what is absolutely amazing, like I said earlier, is they've supercharged this group of supporters who are just vile and filled with anger, and they've set them loose. And it's incredible to me how they will walk in blindly and vote for people who literally go against every single moral they claim to have. They are, in fact, the party of hate, as Mission Ready Men just said in the chat. However, keep in mind, the turnout yesterday was still immensely small. This isn't even close to a midterm turnout where you're getting up into the 70s, 80%, sometimes 60s on the low end. This isn't certainly a general election. This is a couple of states that had Democratic legwork going. The GOP didn't put as much into any of them as they want. Like, New York doesn't count. I don't count New York when I'm talking about this portion, because that's a city race. And I know it's a big city, but it's still a city race. And yeah, Sears and Ciattarelli both refused Trump's help, and I think that did hurt them. As a matter of fact, Lieutenant Governor Sears, who I still like, I still think she's a good person, but she said it's time to move on from Trump in one of her speeches. That's just, I mean, it's just not something. If you say that, you do not have your finger on the pulse of what is still going on with conservatism, which MAGA is still large and in charge in conservatism one way or another. Yeah, exactly, Mission Ready Men. He never forgave her for it. And you know what? She never tried to make up for it. Like, look, she did herself harm politically. Ciattarelli did too. But the Republicans didn't show up. The GOP didn't spend a lot of money in those races. The AG one, I was kind of shocked. And look, Virginia, if Virginia loses control of their Congress, their state Congress, I'll tell you right now, Virginia is about to become New York City with their rules, or New York State, Oregon, Washington, not Washington, California. 2A is gone. I'll tell you right now, 2A will be gone so fucking fast. They won't say it's gone, but they're going to start doing what California does, where they're just going to throw every bill they possibly can, and knowing that a lot of it's going to get overturned, but they're going to hope to be able to sneak one through with the right language. That's going to be Virginia soon. Jersey's been gone for years. So the only hope for Jersey is that it was starting to pull back. And then I got 7 minutes left. Then we get to Prop 50. Prop 50 passed. Actually by a larger margin than I thought it would. 64-35. I thought there was a chance that Prop 50 would hold, but apparently not. And of course, Newsom immediately started doing his parade, yada, yada, yada. But then came the lawsuit. A lawsuit was filed today by Dillon Law Firm out of San Francisco. And that lawsuit essentially says, wait a minute, this new law does not equally represent the voters in any of the districts due to what we know from the voting numbers or registered voter numbers, and therefore is not legal. And they filed this. I have the tweet here somewhere. Here it is. They filed this motion. Mark, well, I'm going to screw up his last name, and I used to know it because he ran for Senate in this state. Mark Muser, I think it might be Moser, but whatever. Dear Gavin Newsom, I hate to rain on your parade, but your celebration over the passage of Prop 50 will need to wait a few days. You've been sued. Your unconstitutional racial gerrymandering is now heading to federal 3-panel judge, 9th Circuit Court. By the way, another conservative judge was confirmed today to the 9th Circuit Court. That court is almost being entirely flipped. I think it's like right at 60% of conservative judges now. Trump's first term, he packed that, and he's continued to. Heading to the 3-panel judge and maybe SCOTUS to determine if your use of race in drawing congressional districts should be enjoined. Yes, Prop 50, how they want to do the maps now is racially based, or there is a racial component to it. Why does that matter? Well, we saw what's going on in Texas. What forced Texas's redistricting is they found out that race was part of the redistricting, and we was told, hey, that's illegal because you can't use race for anything because of the Civil Rights Act. There's now the case in SCOTUS, the Voters' Right Act case out of Louisiana, that is set to be ruled on here. Probably, I thought we were going to have a decision already, to be completely honest. And then I figured they probably held off till after this election last night, so nobody said that it was interference in the election. But I believe, and based off of what this lawsuit's saying out of the Dillon Law Group, essentially is if the Voting Right Act, if Article 3, I believe it's Article 3, is stripped away, then Prop 50 is also going to be stripped away because race was a portion of the plan to redraw it. And that would make it falling under the Voters' Right Act, Article 3, which is most likely going to be stripped out. I do not see anything where Article 3 is going to stay. And if you want to look that case up, it's Calais, the Calais case in SCOTUS. Speaking of SCOTUS, I had a couple minutes left. They're talking about the tariffs today. And once again, everybody's favorite Supreme Court justice,
did any president under
Jackson, had this to say. And ladies and gentlemen, this woman sits on the Supreme Court.
Did any president under TWIA use that language to impose tariffs?
Well, yes, President Nixon's 1971 tariff.
Not a tariff. That wasn't a tariff. It was a licensing agreement during wartime. It was a specific thing.
Wait for it.
A tariff I'm talking about.
I'm referring to President Nixon's 1971 tariff.
I'm sorry. Excuse me. Yes, I thought you meant Lincoln.
Not only that, but then it was uphill.
1971, he said very clearly. I know he's got kind of a raspy voice. 1971, so it couldn't have been Lincoln. He then said President Nixon's name. She didn't hear that. She comes back with, oh, I thought you said Lincoln. And then wait, the end is the best part.
By the Court of Appeals with exclusive jurisdiction under this very phrase.
Can I back you up just a second? I'm sorry. You're talking so quickly.
Sorry.
You're talking so quickly. This is a Supreme Court justice, and she's not in one of the older ones. It's not like if Clarence Thomas said, hey, I'm writing a little slow. Can you slow that down? I'm a man in my 70s, right? Ketanji Jackson's younger than I am, I think. And he's saying that this U.S. Solicitor Souter, Sauer rather, is talking too fast. Nothing but the absolute best and the brightest did Obama pick. And she's another one. This is not her first, like, what the fuck moment out of SCOTUS, actually. This is like her 10th. She's just, again, I'm waiting for someone to say it in the chat room, but we talk about DEI hires. You can't tell me there's somebody that wasn't more qualified than her. I mean, come on. This was literally, look, when Biden said that he was going to fill his government full of women and women of color, he also meant SCOTUS. And that's exactly why she was picked for that spot. So I'm going to take a break. Before I come back, please like and subscribe to the channel. Like this episode, subscribe to the channel if you can. Also check out our friends over at KLRN Radio, who simulcast my show, and I'm very, very thankful for. We'll be back right after this.
Welcome to Reaver of Common Sense, where we cut through the noise of news and politics with a sharp wit and clear discussion. Tune in every Monday and Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for a refreshing dose of reality as we fearlessly tackle the tough topics with no nonsense, just pure common sense. Visit shrmedia.com to discover where you can catch Reaver of Common Sense in action. He's here to amplify your inner logic. He may not always be polite, he may not always be refined, but one thing's for sure, he always tells it like it is.
Come listen to BZ's Berserk Bobcat Saloon Radio Show. Live on select and exclusive Tuesday and Thursday nights at 11 p.m. Eastern, 10 p.m. Central, and 8 p.m. Pacific on the SHR Media Rumble channel, SHR Media YouTube channel, X, Twitch, Spreaker, and wherever great conservative podcasts are found. BZ, your conservative Sherpa, guides you through the maelstrom of Democrat, leftist, and globalist lies, chaos, deceit, and betrayal. Raised as a free-range child with dirt, stains, mud, and freedom, BZ broadcasts from North Idaho, comfortably surrounded by actual normal people. Jump into our plush, sumptuous, palatial, and resplendent chat room on rumble.com. Click on live chat to join. Now, with 37% more umbrage and 19% more bulbosity than previous shows, featuring delicious Liberty additives for the best in late-night conservatarian talk radio. BZ reminds you that with great beard comes great responsibility. No chinchillas were harmed, embarrassed, fat-shamed, or the focus of any sarcasm whatsoever in the making of this ad.
New discoveries and insights. If we can't question it, then it's not science, it's merely dogma dressed up in a lab coat. Let's explore how science has been settled until it wasn't. The phrase, "trust the science," has been used by various figures to silence debate and foster compliance. Real science invites scrutiny and thrives on skepticism, while manufactured consensus demands obedience without understanding.
What you're watching right there
Settled
is an
science is often
awesome presentation. Jersey Joe's been making under our educational tab on our SHR Media YouTube channel. You can click educational. There's a whole bunch of videos that Joe's making on there. They've been fantastic. He's doing a great job. So please check those out as well. Give them a like, give them a watch, because I think they're super cool, and I think it's worth watching. Most of them are about 10 minutes. They just pick a bunch of different subjects, what the militia actually means and what the founders meant for it to mean. He broke down the Obamacare disaster and the costs in that, and then political violence in America and a couple other ones. So if you have a chance, please check it out. And also check out the website, shrmedia.com. I know I'm pimping us a lot tonight. I know. But reality of the situation is we've made some advances with SHM Media as a group, all of us together. And one of those is we've been writing articles every single day. Some of them op-eds, some of them straight news articles, some of them political, whatever it is. If you get a chance, check it out. We're trying to be the go-to news source for you. We're trying to cover things we think are important to you. We're trying to cover it in a way that we think that you can consume it quickly, so your whole day is not just spent staring at our website, and then gain information out of it. So please, if you have a chance, check out shonmedia.com. Now to the tragic part, and this was just horrible. And there's so many videos that I'm not going to replay them. I'm not a big fan of playing videos where people perish and play it repetitively like the news. I just think that the souls, the victims that were involved deserve better than that. Yesterday evening, local time, 5:15 p.m., a UPS cargo jet flight 2976 and MD-11F crashed shortly after takeoff from Louisville Muhammad Ali International Airport going to Honolulu. It landed striking several industrial buildings and lots, including a petroleum refinery facility, or a petroleum recycling facility, rather. The crash site is over there. Last check was a mile long. It's enormous. I've watched a couple of the either pilots or investigators that I trust, and I'll talk about just what they said really quick in a minute. But it's up to 12 confirmed dead, 9 still injured, 2 critical. That includes the 3 UPS crew that were on board. It was fully loaded with estimates of 25,000 gallons to 28,000 gallons. The NTSB and the FAA are leading the investigation. They are on the ground. There was an update today. If you go to the NTSB's website, they gave a pretty good update today. Governor Beshear said, anyone who's seen the images, the videos, know how violent this crash is. It's one of the toughest moments, and I can say from my personal experience, when you're wondering whether that person that you know or care about has survived something like this. UPS Airlines released a statement, said approximately 5:20 p.m. tonight, UPS flight 2976 from Louisville to Honolulu, and MD-11 with 3 crew members on board was involved in an accident in Louisville. At this time, we have not confirmed any injuries or casualties. UPS will release more facts. Look, folks, one of the fatality, obviously the crew, but the others on the ground, was a young child. If you saw the video, it was just unbelievable, the explosion. It's one of those things that it shocks you to see. And look, we have the internet. We see stuff like this all the time, unfortunately. And it was still gut-wrenching to see. Looks like the number 1 engine on the left somehow came loose from the plane. We know that because there are images of it in the grass on the right side, or what would have been the right side of the airplane, or the runway. The whole engine just detached, dislodged. There was an accident in the 70s out of Chicago where something very similar with the DC-9, the shorter version of the MD-11, happened, where it dislodged, and because of that, the slats retracted and it lost lift on the left side of the aircraft. And that's what this one did, very much similar, or would have done similar if it got higher. The plane was on fire before it tried to rotate off the tarmac. You could see the nose up attitude on the plane. Blanco Lario has a great breakdown on his YouTube channel of it, that he did. Minotaur Pilot did one too last night. But it then dipped. Everyone's saying it's because the slats on that side retracted, and it went what they call a knife's edge into the building, which is another reason why the debris field is so long, is because it didn't have anything kind of biting into the ground for a while. We don't know. NTSB said today it did not have maintenance. It was not delayed. That was too early. Speculations that came out is that, it just left the maintenance shop and that's why it delayed. NTSB said that is not the case. They did recover both black boxes. They believe that they're going to get information out of those black boxes, and they'll give us more. So we'll follow it. Obviously, it's a major deal. And it's something that we'll keep an eye on. A couple other things here that we want to talk about. Let's see. Oh, I'm in the wrong. I'm in the wrong section of my own stuff. It's tough in here, folks. I'm not gonna lie. Let's see. I told you guys, I think last Monday, was it Monday? God, Monday seems so long ago right now. Told you on Monday how Trump put Nigeria back on the or gave a message over the weekend in Nigeria to start protecting Christians that are being slaughtered in Nigeria. And they responded mostly positively. But now they're back on a watch list. And this is from Fox News and Marco Rubio. Oh,
he is going to put the country of Nigeria back on America's country of particular concern list. He is doing this citing the religious prosecution and persecution of Christians in Nigeria, as well as the wholesale slaughter of Christians based on their faith.
and if you've followed anything out of Nigeria, it's awful. Nigeria is in pretty much a civil war. They don't want to say it's a civil war, but I mean, it's a civil war. But because the Nigerian government is not protecting Christians in the nation, and they're being slaughtered in droves by Boko Haram and other affiliated Islamist groups. We finally just said, hey, we're watching you now. Now you better start doing what we're supposed to do, or you're going to have more problems with us. Apparently, Trump even commented about military intervention at some point. I don't know if that's true. I didn't hear that comment directly. I just saw that through the grapevine. So that's something to be watched. And look, this isn't just a new thing. I can remember, I think, Big E talking about this 6-8 months ago. I can remember other people talking about it a lot since then. And it's something that, it shouldn't matter what your faith is, what you believe in or don't believe in as a human being. Anytime a group is being targeted for extermination and genocide by an organization, and for no reason, I mean, they're literally being attacked. I know October 7th in Gaza and Gaza and Gaza. Gaza did October 7th. They perpetrated that. And there was years leading up to that of attacks that happened in Israel. And as I've said before, I don't care how you feel about Israel. The simple fact of the matter is, if you were Israel, what would you have done in that situation? How long would you have taken it? The problem is there's no protection in Nigeria for the Christians. They're just there. And the government, whose job it is to protect the people, is just not doing that. It's just not. And it's tragic, and it would be a genocide if something doesn't change relatively soon. And lastly, and then I'm going to go into a couple other quick stories, but this one, Dick Cheney, look, when you die and you are an otherwise prominent public figure at one time, including the vice president of this nation, and you get hardly any coverage, it has to tell you what the country thinks about you and has learned about you. Former Vice President Dick Cheney passed away on the 3rd of November at the age of 84 due to complications from pneumonia. His death received hardly any coverage. Neither party claimed him. You saw at the end of the last general election, he supported Kamala. He was a uniparty stalwart. He loved the uniparty. He loved us going to war. He did not look, for a guy who only shot his buddy in the face while he was hunting. He loved to see other people go fight and die. He was born in 1941 in Nebraska. He was raised in Wyoming, served as a congressman in Wyoming 1979 to 89, and then Secretary of Defense under George H.W. Bush, and then vice president under the same George W. Bush, 2001, 2009. He was the architect of the post 9/11 policies and the Patriot Act expansion. Look, he was the guy who perpetrated the reason we went into Iraq, the weapons of mass destruction. He was the guy who pushed that huge. And And on top of that, made a shitload of money off of Halliburton from it. He led us into Iraq on a lie. We did not have to go into Iraq. And as a result, we were stuck there in an endless war with Americans dying, injured, or PTSD, sometimes even worse than a physical injury, for years to come. He was, and let's get into the Patriot Act. Patriot Act was fucking awful. We can all agree on that. Patriot Act was the biggest loss of rights in America, invasion of privacy into citizens' lives. We can agree on that. He was the whole thing of warrantless surveillance was part of the Patriot Act. The expansion of the FISA courts under the Patriot Act, the same things that caused the spying for Trump and his by Obama. That was all Dick Cheney. By the end of his life, everybody on the right, for the most part, disowned him, even the war hawks, because he was such a shitbag that they had to disown him to protect their own ass. You say, oh, you shouldn't speak ill of the dead. Well, you know what? Dick Cheney caused a lot of death of our soldiers. He did. There's no way around that. I said before, when we first started talking about going to Iraq and the evidence that they presented, I was for it. And then the truth came out and we learned that it was just a manufactured lie. And then you saw everything that happened with Iraq, the fact that politicians yet fought another war. So then the generals weren't allowed to do what they had to do until we started taking huge casualties. And they were forced to kind of unchain the military, let the military do military things in order to, remember the surge, in order to get things back under control. And for what? His legacy in Iraq is Iraq today. Iraq today is a shit show. The government there is not, it's not a democracy. It is not anything close to that. They say they are. But Iraq is not much better than when we stepped away. We had to step away at some point. We couldn't be there forever. We couldn't continuously fix the country. We never should have been there to begin with. And we all know somebody who's either served over there and either didn't come home or still suffers the effects of it. And you can thank Dick Cheney for that. He was a big part of that. And then, like I said, at the end of his life, supporting Kamala Harris against Donald Trump. Yeah. The right absolutely disowned him, and rightfully so. And then the left, which is amazing because they were all metaphorically jerking him off for supporting Kamala Harris. I said it. They were all hailing him. Oh, look, he can cross party lines. He's like his daughter, January 6th. He understands what real democracy is all about. Well, wait a minute. You guys were all shitting on him back when the war was going on. To your credit, you called him out early and you hated him until he was useful. And then all of a sudden he wasn't so bad again. And they loved him until Kamala lost, and then they forgot who he was. And then he died. And there was almost no coverage of it whatsoever. What does that tell you about your legacy? And I'm looking at all these politicians in Washington, D.C. and all over the country. What's your legacy going to be? Is that going to be you? You're not going to be George Washington, are you? The one where like everybody realizes what he did, or a Lincoln or a Teddy Roosevelt, right? People that even left and right, for the most part, not always, but for the most part, I'm talking about the stable, realistic ones, not the 20% of the lunatics, hail as heroes of this country for one reason or another. And when you're vice president, yeah, I know vice president doesn't get the same coverage that the president does, clearly. But Cheney had a lot of coverage as vice president for not good reasons. There was no moment of silence. There was no sadness. There was no nothing. It was just, oh, bye, Dick. Bye, Dick. Have fun down there. So when I ask you politicians, when you're making your decisions behind closed doors, when you're having your secret little meetings, when you're doing this, when you're doing that, what's your legacy going to be? I don't get overly spiritual, but you know, when you leave this earth, the only thing you have is your legacy within your family, your friends, or if you're on a national level, it's the country. And the country does look back at the history and realize who is problematic and who is not. Usually, there's been times where history looks back on certain events and why people made certain decisions, and they look back at it much better than in the moment. Well, now that we see the whole picture, we understand why that person made that decision in that time. History is not going to look back at Dick Cheney with anything positive. He is a pimple on the ass of American history, plain and simple. He was gross. He was underhanded. He was seedy. He was a warmonger. He had no problem sending young men off to die in battle and women. And Big E said, I was surprised there was nothing for American Pravda. Yeah, I was surprised too. Trump is going to have a legacy. And look, I think history will look back on Trump even better than we see him now, because I think Trump has done a great job of exposing what this country does and what this government has done behind our backs. The deals that they make, the amount of money that we've spent overseas. We all knew, we didn't realize how bad it was. Right. And I think Trump's legacy is going to be that. He showed the American people how dirty politicians like Dick Cheney truly are. And is Trump perfect? No, Trump's not perfect. He's human. Do I agree with everything that ever comes out of Trump's mouth? No, but I support him. I think that by and large, his heart's in the right place. And I think by and large, he works hard for the American people every day. Now, people may not like how he says things. Okay, that's a fair. I mean, I get that. But you can't argue about what he does. You can't argue that, yeah, and there's been a couple decisions that I'm not exactly thrilled about, like I said. But I would say 98% of the time, I support what he's doing. I think 98% of the time, he has people like me and you in mind and actually makes the decisions based on that. And I know the left is going to just scream that he's a rich guy trying to make himself richer and blah, 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 and ballrooms and all this other shit. But the simple fact of the matter is, everything that's going on with the tariffs right now, how often did you as an American citizen prior to this big tariff fight ever worry about tariffs? When was the last time you thought about it? NAFTA? Under what, Clinton? He exposed tariffs. He exposed USAID, the billions that were just being given away of your taxpayer dollars, my taxpayer dollars, ad nauseum. He actually made portions of this country, males especially, who were ostracized and bastardized by academia and schools and you know, feminists. He actually made them feel all right to be themselves. Blue collar workers, same thing. Trump made people feel okay to be an American again, because there were a lot of people that they were told, which is how Mondami came to power, that whole age group, that whole group of young Democrats, they shamed. They have no shame of their own whatsoever, but they shame everybody who disagrees with them. It's the shame game. That's how I brought this up before when I was talking about communism. That's how that comes before the violence. Shaming you into feeling a certain way. McMahon, thank you so much. I appreciate that. And Trump made it okay for young men in this country to shrug off that shame and say, no, I'm not what they say I am. All these allegations of because I look at a woman the wrong way, or I don't necessarily agree with X, Y, and Z, that I'm a rapist and I'm a homophobe and an Islamophobe, and I'm not. I just don't have to agree with it. You know, I told that story, I think on BZ show, I told the story recently, but the kid I had dinner with just sat next to at a bar, and we ate dinner next to each other. I didn't know him. 30-year-old kid. So that he can't maintain any friends his own age because he is a conservative. He came from conservative parents in California. He had a hell of a time in high school because he was in high school when all of this shit was starting. He had a hard time in college, learned not to say shit about what he believed in. He literally had to be a chameleon to get through college because every single class was shit on him this first year for being a conservative. So he had to be a chameleon just so he could keep his sanity. 98% of his friends his age, all massive leftists, and refused to associate with him based on his politics and his beliefs, even though he didn't. And he said, I'll be friends with anybody. I don't have to agree with you on everything. That doesn't mean we can't find common ground. Now he says all of his friends are people my age, almost 50, who, even if they don't agree with him politically, will have a conversation with him. That's what shame did. That's what the shaming of the feminazis and the progressives and all the other ones, like Mike said in the chat room, the feminazis, that's what it caused in young men. And it was completely okay for a long time before Trump came along in this country for the leftists to just bastardize and attack those people. And at my age, you don't give a shit. You just don't care. You're like, oh, okay, well, go fuck yourself, right? But when you're 18, 19, 20 years old and you're still shaping as a human being and you're being told that everything your parents raised you to be is wrong and your parents are wrong and they were a horrible individual and your mother was a weak woman and your father was a racist bigot and a misogynist because he was a father, even though he didn't do anything wrong. When you're 18, 19, 20, 21 years old and you're still building your lives confidence, you're still building your beliefs, your core values, that's unsettling. That knocks you off your rock. And congrats to Danny for not coming off his rock and staying who he was. Yeah, he had to fake it in college, and I don't blame him. I faked it in jobs. Oh yeah, no, this is great. I don't give a shit. But I think, like Mike brought up in the chat room, we talk about Trump's legacy. I think that's a big part of it. Is that it made it okay to be men again in this country when it wasn't for a long time. Let's see. Mission Ready Men. Let's get through a couple chats. I showed the one from Mick. Mission Ready Men said, I think it started under Obama. I agree. And look, you and I were friends back then, and we talked about that before we got on the air. How it started, I don't know, 2010 is when it really started. And it continues today. We both lost friends over it. I still have people I used to be friends with that will not talk to me for, some of which will still post all their shit on social media that I can see, and I just shake my head and wonder where they fell off the rails, because they used to be intelligent, free-thinking, smart people, and they fell just off the rails completely with common sense. And like I said, they're shameless, but they demand everybody else be full of shame. And that's how you control masses of good people. That's how you control honest or nice people. You shame them into compliance. That's the first step. And then when shaming stops working, what's the next step? We'll find out in New York City here probably in the next year or two, because it's only going to get worse in New York City. So at the end of the day, these elections weren't a big deal for the parties by and large. It wasn't a huge victory for the Democrats, and it wasn't a huge loss for conservatives. Yeah, it would have been nice to win those seats, but it would have been nice to hit the lottery every single time I've played it, and I haven't yet. It's just a pipe dream. Sometimes it just don't work out that way. Time will tell us which way it's going to go, and time will tell us. By the way, I asked Polymarket today. I asked Polymarket on X. If you don't follow me on X, it's number 2 against tyranny. I asked Polymarket randomly, hey, what are the have you got the odds yet for when Mandami's going to be recalled? And they said they hadn't. But they actually responded to me about it, which I thought was kind of funny. But I think that it's going to happen. I think that within 2 years, that city's going to be such a shit show. There's going to be a recall election. Now, whether or not it passes is going to be a different story. But when you're losing 1 out of 10 people, allegedly, that's people, 1 out of 10 people in New York said that they would leave if Mondami was elected. There goes your tax base, because that's people who have the money to move. So that means it's probably your higher tax base. That's going to be a huge hit to the budget that you already are underwater with. When you have New York cops saying that they're already looking to apply to other departments out of state, out of New York City, and to get the hell out of there because they already see the writing on the wall, that's a problem too. New York is going to be a tragedy on some levels. It's going to go back to what it was in the 70s and 80s, where it was just burning and it was just crime ridden and it was poor and it was gross and it was dirty, well before Giuliani came and cleaned it up. And it's going to only be a matter of time. Folks, that's it for me. Thank you so much for tuning in this evening. Thank you to everybody in chat. Had a good time with the chatters. You guys are awesome. Please like and subscribe to the channel. You can check me out every Monday and Wednesday, 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 on the East Coast, right here on the SHR Media Network. You can also find my op-eds and my articles on shrmedia.com. Tuesday and Thursday mornings, you have Mission Ready Men Report, 9 a.m. Pacific, noon on the East Coast. Tuesday, Thursday night, you have BZ's Berserk Bobcat Saloon, which I and the other SHR boys are going to be on tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 East Coast. Make sure you check that out. Mondays, Fridays, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 East Coast. You have the Reaver of Common Sense with my man Jersey Joe, who's also doing a lot of other writing. We're all doing a lot of writing, so all of us are on there if you want to find out writing on SHR Media. And then Sundays, 5 p.m. Pacific, you have the Lost Wanderer show on the SHR YouTube, and we're very thankful to have them again. Check out that show. It makes you think. So if you're not a thinker, maybe not, but I hope you're a thinker and you'll check them out. Special thanks to our friends over at KLRN Radio. Please like and subscribe. Do us a favor. We need all the help we can get. I will see you tomorrow night with BZ. I hope you have a great night. Take care. Bye.